Hey, what's up? John Sonmez from SimpleProgrammer.com. I figured I'd do a quick real estate video as I was answering a question for a friend here, and I thought this was something interesting that I hadn't talked about before as far as real estate goes. If you're interested in some more of my real estate or investing videos, you can check them out here. This playlist of all the ones that I've put together so far. Occasionally I do these types of videos for those of you that are interested in doing some real estate investment. If you don't know about me, I've been investing in real estate for about 20 years. I've got about 26 units that I rent out. So that is why I talk about this sometimes. I think it's one of the best investments, probably the best investment that you can make in your future, because it is truly, if you're doing it right, passive income, whereas a lot of other things that are quote passive income aren't really passive income and they don't last forever, whereas real estate pretty much lasts forever. So anyway, let's see. So I got this email basically asking about, I'm going to skip some of it because some of it's a little bit personal here, but it basically says, hi John, I'm about to rent my first property. I wanted to ask you a quick question. What should be reasonable fees charged by property management companies for first month of lease, remaining months, and lease renewal? I've pinged a few property management companies, and so far the lowest I got for these 3 points respectively were 50%, 10%, and 25%. I still think the monthly fee could be lower than 10%, but they seem very strict and I don't want to make too much pressure on them to lower more. The property is located in Orlando, close to the airport, and he gives some details about the property. He says it has about 4K of square feet and is 8 years old. He's got a website for it. What do you think and recommend as fees and also insurance? Want to make sure I avoid pitfalls. So there's a couple of things here. So the fees, let's talk about what the fees are. So when you have your property managed, the property management company obviously has to make some money. So how do they make money? Well, they make it through a few ways. One is that the basic way is that they're going to charge you a percentage of the rent that they collect. Usually it's going to be around 10%. Now you can find deals that are cheaper. Obviously if you have more properties, like for a lot of my deals, they're cheaper than that because I've got a lot of properties being managed by the companies, but 10% is a general good number. And then they also usually now make money from the first month lease. When they sign a new lease, they call it a lease up fee. In this case, he's saying it's 50%, and then a lease renewal. So if they renew a lease for a tenant, they charge, in this case, 25% of it. Not all property management companies charge all of these fees. Some of them have different rates on these fees. A lease renewal maybe is not as common, but a lease up is typically found. It depends. Some companies would charge you advertising, so they wouldn't charge a lease up fee. So there's different variations of that. I think that 50, 10, 25% seems reasonable to me to charge 50% of the total of the first month rent for a lease up, and then 10% for the remaining months seems okay. The lease renewal maybe is a little bit, I might negotiate on that and have that dropped or removed altogether, but those are kind of negotiable things. But anyway, what I wanted to talk about really was a couple of things here. One of them is that the fees are not the most important thing, right? I don't think a lot of people, when they search for property management companies, they make the mistake of searching for who has the lowest fees, right? Who is, going to charge them the least amount. And that's not really the point that I would be looking for. It's important. I mean, you don't want to get ripped off, but in the long run, a property management company is going to cost you a lot more money than fees if they're a bad property management company. The fees are going to be the small part of what you're going to pay, because they could end up having high repair bills, ripping you off on repairs, unnecessary repairs, high maintenance fees if they're using their own maintenance company, vacancy rates if they're not good at advertising and renting out your property, or evictions if the tenants are not good that they're putting in there, if they're not doing the proper background checks. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that you really want to think about that's going to be more expensive. So really, what I recommend is interviewing a few property management companies and getting references if you can, and then going and checking those references and making sure that you do a very thorough job of picking the right management company as opposed to negotiating on fees. Now, once you've picked the right one, what you feel is best, you can negotiate on fees, and you probably should. You should always negotiate to some degree on any kind of deal that you do. But don't let that be the main factor. Don't compare. Don't say, well, this property management company charges 10% and this one charges 7%, so I'm going to go with 7 because that's a better deal. Because you can't really buy this service like that. It's not like you're going to the store and comparing toilet paper and buying toilet paper and choosing the lowest price one. Although that's probably not a good idea, as well, as you may have experienced if you've done that before. So anyway, the whole point is don't base it off of just those fees. So they are important, and it can make a difference. But again, think about the more important things here. The other thing I would say, in this particular case, if you're renting like a 4,000 square foot place in Orlando, it's sort of, I don't know, that's the kind of an expensive property. It's going to be harder to rent out. You're going to have more potential for damage if it's a kind of a luxury place. I would tend to not rent those types of things out for long-term rentals. Here's the thing also, I don't know if you're going to be able to make the mortgage payment with the rent. And so a lot of people, they make a mistake when they do real estate investment and they speculate. Speculating is bad. What you don't want to do is count on appreciation. You want to count on it being a good deal and a good investment from the get-go. And sort of, you might want to sell the property and then buy an investment property. This is just, my advice here. The way that you figure this out is you say, if I were just investing money, if I hadn't already owned this property, if I were thinking about doing an investment, would this make sense as an investment? If it would, then go ahead. But if it wouldn't, then don't. Don't just rent something out just because you already own it. It might be better to just sell it, and if you've got losses, cut your losses, and then use that money to invest somewhere else where it is going to make sense. Because when I'm talking about real estate investment, I'm talking about the long haul. I'm talking about doing things where you're looking at making a profit, where you're building a future maybe 20, 30 years down the road, not in the short-term 1-5 year range, which is sort of speculation. And so you really got to think about the long game there. So in that case, the thing that I'm evaluating for property is I want to know that the rents that brings in are going to cover the mortgage and the property management fees, the maintenance, insurance, taxes, all of that stuff, so that I'm going to be profitable from the get-go. That it's a good investment. It's going to be either something that's cash flowing or it's being paid off essentially by the rent that's being generated or that's coming in from the tenants. So that's just a few considerations there. You could also potentially, if it's more of a luxury, do a vacation rental. In that case, property management fees are probably going to be around 30%, but you're going to charge higher. You can charge weekly, and maybe you're going to have a furnished place. But again, you're going to be putting yourself out at a risk there for damages to the property, and you're going to have a high turnover of multiple tenants. It gets fairly complicated. I think that's a little bit less hands-off. So, definitely real estate investing is a good idea, but you want to think about these things and be very careful. One of the most important decisions I think you make in real estate investing that really determines whether or not you're going to be successful or not, and how successful is the choice of a property management company. I've made mistakes in the past. I've hired bad property management companies. I've suffered the results of doing that. No property management company is perfect. Even the ones I use today are not perfect, but they do a good job, and they do a much better job than ones that I've hired in the past. So that's just some things to consider there. And I think that's about it. And don't worry too much about those fees. Like I said, the only one of those fees that you mentioned that I'd be most concerned about would be the lease up fee, just because you're gonna have leases renew every year. I wouldn't want to keep on paying that fee. If it's a high fee, 25% is not that bad. You could just amortize it out over the cost over the year, and then figure out what is the real percentage there. So maybe you could do something to kind of manipulate the management fee percentage versus the lease up fee or something like that. You can definitely negotiate, but just don't make that, don't be a penny wise and pound foolish. And if you're negotiating just on the prices that property management companies charge, and you think that they're all similar, then you're going to be in for a world of hurt. Because I've seen property management companies that charge 6% and no lease up fee, and they suck. They're going to get their money somehow. It costs a certain amount of money to manage properties, and you want them to be making their money in an honest, straightforward way up front from their fees, and not on the back end by offering you services and jacking up repair costs and having unnecessary repairs and all that kind of stuff, which they will do. You have to watch out. This is a shady industry. To be very, very careful and watch your ass, because people are going to try and take advantage of you. So I don't want to scare you off, but that's the reality of the situation. You got to be ready for it. So anyway, hopefully that helps you. If you're interested in more videos on real estate, like I said, you can check out this playlist here where I've got that. You can also check out my book, Soft Skills Software Developers Life Manual. I put a chapter in there about specifically how to get started in real estate investment, because I didn't feel like there's a lot of unreliable information out there. There's a lot of bad information out there, and so I wanted to make a condensed, here's kind of the basics of it. And so you can find that chapter in there that, if you're thinking about going into real estate investment, the book, that one chapter is probably worth the whole price of the book, because it's probably going to save you a lot of money and time, and give you accelerated knowledge in this area that's taken me a while to acquire and I can't find anywhere else. So that's why I put that in there. Anyway, that's it. If you like this video, subscribe to the channel. I'll talk to you next time. Take care.